All right. You want me to take it, Dan?
Sure.
Okay.
Works for me.
All right. Welcome, everyone. So this is a joint IBC IFC tag meeting for the State Building Code Council, December 17th, 2024. So we welcome here the chair of IFC, Dan Young, and then our vice chair of both, Roger. I thought I saw him on here. Yep, Haringa. Let's start by taking roll, please, Dustin.
All right, I'm going to begin with the IBC tag. Tag chair Todd Bayreuther.
Here.
Chair alternate Roger Haringa.
Here.
Thank you. Architects primary Joe Mayo.
Here.
Alternate Che Fortaleza.
Here.
Thank you. Building official primary Tim Woodard.
Here.
Alternate Steve Belzak.
I'm here.
Fire services representative primary Lance Dahl. And he had to take a quick call. He let us know he'll be here. So we'll mark him down for now, but he'll be back. Cities and counties primary Hoyt Jeter.
Yes, I'm here. And I'm just going to go to the restroom real quick, so I'll be right back.
10-4 Hoyt. Affordable housing representative primary Todd Sullivan. Not seeing in the room today. General contractor developer primary Bill Mybush. And I'm not seeing them in the room today. Manufacturer supplier primary Brian Horseman. Not seen in the room today. Structural engineer primary Joshua Mergens. Not seen in the room. For the alternate Trent Tenney.
Yeah, I'm here. I will have to take off at 2:30 today.
Heard. Let me make a quick note. All righty. For persons with disability or accessibility expert primary Michael Shaw.
Present.
Thank you. Building owner property manager primary Brett Conway. Not seen in the room today. General public subject matter expert primary Michael Barth.
Over here.
Thank you. For the alternate Leah Summer. Not seeing them in the room. State enforcement agency primary Paul Clark.
Here.
Thank you. And fire protection engineer primary Andy Leanto. And I'm not seeing them on the room either. So with the building code tag, we have 9 seats represented. Our quorum is 8 for that group. And so we're good to go with business within that group. And starting off with the fire tag.
Just to let you know, Dustin, just so you know.
You're back. Thanks. Fire tag chair Dan Young.
Here.
Thank you. We got the alternate Roger Haringa. For the architect primary Ning Wing. I'm not seeing them in the room today. For the alternate Jacob Liddycoat. Also not seeing in the room. Building official primary Quinn Tai. Not seen in the room. For the alternate Ray Shipman. Not seeing in the room today. Fire official, fire marshal primary Ken Brulette.
Here.
Thank you. Cities and counties primary Hugo Sotelo. Not seen in the room. And ex officio Mike Nykrum. Not seen online. For the general contractor developer again for Bill Mybush.
Dustin, Bill did say he was going to be a little bit late.
Okay, gotcha. Manufacturer supplier primary Ricky Campbell. Not seen in the room here today.
Hey, Dustin, this is Quinn. I'm here now. Sorry I'm late.
No worries. Thank you, Quinn. Go back and make that a change. Bill said he's going to be late. Fire protection engineer primary Walker Danucci.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the alternate, Dave Cookott.
Present.
Thank you. Fire sprinkler industry primary Sean Morgan.
Present.
Thank you. For the alternate, Kevin Marr.
Present.
General public subject matter expert primary Samir Mokashi. I'm not seeing them in the room. For the alternate, Seth Henderson.
Present.
Fire alarm industry primary David Mao.
Present.
Thank you. For the alternate, Zachary Tuck. Not seeing here today. And Lance, we got you on the other
Yep.
one.
Sounds good.
Uh,
Thank you.
So for the quorum there, we're sitting with 8 seats represented and 7's the quorum for the fire tag. So we are sitting with a quorum of both groups.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone from the public like to be recognized? Go ahead, Patrick.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Thank you. Okay, Ross?
Yeah, hi there. This is Ross Freeman with the Climate Office at King County. Once again, I'll probably be tag teaming with my colleague Kathleen Petrie throughout the meeting.
Okay, welcome you both. Karsten?
Hello, this is Karsten Jonas. I'm representing myself.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, if no others, we're going to go on to agenda item 2. Go ahead, Joshua. You checking in?
Hi there. Sorry, I was just calling to say I'm having some technical issues, but I should be on now for purposes of roll call.
Awesome,
Gotcha.
thank you.
Let me update our sheet real quick.
Okay, agenda item 2 is review and approve the agenda. So first of all, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. The building code tag almost made it to the finish line Thursday, but did not, and it gave us this opportunity to finish off a few proposals that also have overlap with the fire code tag. So thank you to the fire code tag for jumping in at the last minute. On the agenda, one thing we maybe didn't think about was agenda item 4 are 2 draft opinions that the BFRW committee last week was considering. And I think we asked the building code tag in particular related to EV parking. So it doesn't necessarily have to go there if we want to push that towards the end or as a warm up to the EV block. And then on that note, I'm not sure that the fire code tag has to stick around past agenda item 7. You're welcome, of course, but the 8, 9, and 10 and 11 are all EV related parking. So I think we can make up the rules for today, but I think the goal is that the IBC needs to pass these through on the 3 remaining ones. The fire code tag would be great if you also voted, but our goal is to get the agenda item 12, get them into a package or deny them, and then pass the package on to the BFRW committee for Friday.
And I
Okay,
have,
so
I
go
have
ahead.
one thing to add on the agenda for number 7. After we posted this, we got an updated revision with some more stuff for the fixed skyway transit stuff from Sound Transit. So I have an updated document that we didn't get online in time for public notice on that one. So there is an updated document that I'll be sharing today on that one. And I believe Michael Miller, or I might get the name wrong, but Sound Transit should be here today to share on that one as well.
Mark Murray.
Mark Murray, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, so anyone opposed to moving 4? And then where do we want to move it? Do we want to move it as a warm up to the EV charging infrastructure, or do you want to put it at the end?
I was thinking that we at least push it past number 6 or number 7, because those are the ones that touch both the IBC and IFC. Beyond that, I don't have a preference where it falls.
Okay.
In the agenda.
Let's put it after 7 if there's no objection. I think they'll be fairly quick on the input, and then we can get into the 8, 9, 10, 11. Can we hear a motion to approve the agenda then as amended?
So moved. This is Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Second, Dave Cocott.
Second, thank you, Dave. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved as amended. Item 3 is, would anyone like to address the tags on an item not on the agenda? Go ahead, Micah.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to talk about the BFRW committee that occurred on Friday. I appreciate the work of that committee. Had to leave early, and I was disappointed to hear that you had moved the entire fire package forward. Part of the responsibility of that committee, based on previous council discussions, was correlation with the IBC proposals. The IFC package wasn't even opened at that meeting for the most part. The proposals weren't discussed, and they definitely weren't coordinated or correlated with the IBC proposals because those haven't moved out of this tag yet. But they were moved on to council without modification, although I did and others raised some concerns on some that aren't complete, including ones that are on the agenda today. So that's all I want to talk about. I'm hoping that those proposals, including some of those that we're not going to discuss today, will come back to the BFRW committee and be correlated as part of the previous council discussions over the last 2 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. Is that a discussion we should move to the committee on Friday in preparation? Or would there like to be any discussion here?
I was in response to that one, we did bring some of these proposals back here because they had modifications as pointed out at the committee meeting. We brought them back here to this group, brought both groups together for some of the correlation effort. I believe we caught the ones that were identified at the meeting. But as we go to the next BFRW meeting here this Friday, it would be, I guess, totally appropriate for them to kind of open that one back up and discuss the changes potentially made here today. We're attempting to do some of the correlation work. If there's more that needs to happen, I guess we can attempt it at the Friday meeting, but I'm not sure where we're at on timing for getting that done here and moving things forward. So I'd be happy to discuss it a little further.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, Micah, from my point of view, I know that we have had at least one other joint IBC IFC committee meeting, tag meeting, and the purpose of that was to go through proposals that impacted both. And so I had understood that the correlation, and now we're having this additional one for those items that we know has some that impacts both. So it was my assumption that we were working through the correlation as best we can prior to getting approval from the running it through the standing committee and then sending it on to the council. And ultimately the opportunity, if there are still outstanding issues, the opportunity once we issue the CR 102, if there are things that we need to correlate through that process, I am assuming, and it is my opinion, that those changes can be made. Those would be considered editorial, or certainly the council has to try to take in any comments from the public. So, even though we are issuing this CR 102, the council and probably potentially the tags, I'm not sure, have to look at these proposals and make sure that there are editorial changes and impacts from the public may have comments on some of them. So if the public comment is that, hey, you need to correlate this section with that section, that has to occur throughout the rest of this process. So.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. Go ahead, White.
Yeah, just one thing, Micah, to help on that. I'm going to be working with the Code of Correlation Committee. I told Dustin I'll help with that. So that is something I have on my agenda. Once all these things get approved, then we have to go through and make sure if there's show differences and see what has to be done appropriately. But I'm hoping, I assume we're gonna have time to do that. I mean, it looks like we do have some time, but we will be working on correlating the codes appropriately. I'm also on the ICC Code of Correlation Committee, so hopefully for both of those, I won't make a mistake. So.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Micah.
Appreciate that. And Hoyt, and I appreciate your input, Roger. Although I disagree, the combined meetings are not about correlation. They're about probably being efficient and hearing some of these proposals together. However, based on the discussions for the full council, there was desire to have a correlation committee, and the entire council said, hey, we'd rather have the BFP and the other committee do that work, that correlation. That's where that work is supposed to occur regardless of the combined tag meetings. There are proposals listed on the fire package you move forward that the building committee, this tag is not heard. And they relate to certain chapters that overlap, of course, which are chapter 9 and 10 of the fire code and the building code. Those do need to get correlated. That is part of the BFP. Again, I was just voicing that correlation has not occurred at the committee level like it's supposed to, and that package was moved forward. Hopefully we can get that corrected. Thanks.
Thank you. Roger.
Micah, your memory and mine about the final decision by the council of how all of this correlation happens does not align. I know that there's conversations that it is an ongoing process and can occur at the tag level, at the standing committee level, and ultimately through the process of getting public comment.
Okay. Okay, well, but thank you for that, Micah. I think the key here is that we establish when and how that correlation happens, and if it's before the CR 102, which is obviously the important piece. Okay, thank you for that. With that, if there's no other public comment, we're going to go on to agenda item 5. 4 goes before 8. And so we have 3 different petitions on the IBC that we didn't finish, but also partially because we need to bring them in front of the IFC tag. So item 089 has a revision 4. This one's been heard multiple times, and Joe is the proponent. And then just for the record and transparency, I've been helping on this one.
Dustin, are you able to bring up the revised version?
Yes, I was just getting it done. I'm juggling the screens for a little bit.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I can go through a couple changes since the last meeting, and then Dustin, if you'd be so kind as kind of slowly scroll through the proposal. I just wanted to say that I heard the comments in the last meeting, and we've made some updates to the proposal so that everything that's new or changed is now underlined. The numbering has been corrected or is correct. One of the comments from the last meeting was that adding a new section 510.10 created redundancy and potential confusion. So to address that, the proposal is now incorporated back into 510.2 as it originally was, and does not propose to create a new code section 510.10. In addition to some general cleanup, the revised proposal acknowledges Hoyt's comment to specifically address occupied roofs, and that's found in number 8.7. Also addresses Tim's comment about stair pressurization and now requires all stairs to be pressurized regardless of number of stories above the grade plane, 8.8. At the last meeting, I shared some fire testing from what's called the RISE fire test, specifically for type 4B construction, where the test had fully exposed columns, beams, and ceilings. The tests demonstrated 4B construction's resilience during fire, rapid extinguishing after flashover without sprinklers or any active intervention. After 2 hours, the fire was essentially extinguished and tests were carried out for 4 hours without structural compromise. So the proposal is again looking at 4B construction, and some might ask why type 4A wasn't included in the proposal. So a couple of quick words on that. The proposal does require 3-hour fire resistance of all primary structure and load-bearing walls for the type 4B construction. Load-bearing walls are not permitted to be exposed in this proposal, so it would essentially be the equivalent of type 4A for any wall construction. And the main reason is type 4A requires 3 layers of gypsum board encapsulation, and doing all that field work of 3 layers just makes the systems not cost competitive and makes a lot of additional site work, and which is exactly what needs to be eliminated if we're going to deliver housing faster and more efficiently. The additional 3 layers of gypsum board over every timber surface also greatly increases embodied carbon impacts. One final point is that mass timber is far more accurate than concrete, with tolerances around 2 millimeters compared to a 1/2 inch or more for concrete. So it really facilitates use of modular construction and other types of prefabrication that require that kind of tight tolerances. And using a construction system that facilitates prefab, reduces site time, site disruption, site cost, workforce issues related to a shrinking labor pool. It can also deliver projects much faster, which is what we've been talking about, or which has been a major conversation with delivering housing here in our state. And then finally, Dustin, could I quickly share a diagram that I put together, just I think encapsulating this proposal and what it is looking to do. These 3 stacks on the left are type 4C, 4B, and 4A, with for group R 8 stories, 12 stories, and 18 stories respectively, with the maximum allowable height limit. So you can see 4B, 12 stories, 180 feet. And then what this proposal would potentially allow with type 5A construction over a type 4B podium, you could have either 1 or 2 additional stories above the 3-hour horizontal assembly, or with type 3A construction, 2 to 3 additional stories with the maximum 85 feet above the grade plane. And of course, a steeply sloping site might change that a little bit with the grade plane calculation. And Todd, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, so thank you, Joe. And in this proposal, if you remember on Thursday, the IBC decided to table this, and under the context that we probably were going to finish on Thursday. And so there's a little uncertainty on whether or not we could hear this within the package. Bringing it forward today is really kind of the last opportunity to talk about, also to get some input as requested in one of the meetings from the IFC TAG. So it's up to the TAG what to kind of move to talk about today and potentially move forward. But I would say, the interest here, when the Tallwood Ad Hoc Committee in 2015, I believe, met, the goal, it's called Tallwood. The goal was to go to mid-rise and higher on the mass timber. And what often, and this is my industry, what often isn't contemplated is more of these higher performance, low rise typologies. And in this podium proposal, it's not so much to try to be equivalent to 1A. Obviously, it's not non-combustible. And in this proposal, the objective is really to find and understand, the 2 times that it's, in my understanding, the history of going up to the ICC level, only type 4A was proposed as kind of an equivalent to 1A. I think this is different in that we're starting to realize in this industry more of substitution where appropriate in non-combustible construction. So we're seeing 1A buildings that are asking for alternative materials, design, and methods with some, glue lamp columns, for example, with 2 or even 3 hour fire ratings, with some, introduction of ceilings and floors out of the mass timber, so that when we're doing that, the RISE testing, I hope some people are familiar with it on this call, I was really looking at that type 4B typology, where we have a mix of protected and unprotected, and how should we be modeling both performance-based and prescriptive, rules around that. So while this is not trying to go tall, it's purposely obviously staying below the 75-foot, top floor occupied floor height. There is a performance discussion here about that podium and appropriateness, and so I'll leave it there. And Hoyt's had his hand up for a while, so thank you. Go ahead, Hoyt.
Yeah, first thing, mine's more editorial. We don't use the word may anymore. It'd be like shall be or something like that. So that needs to be changed. We don't want to start putting may back into the code. It's been taken out of the national codes. The other thing is, I still would like to see this more on a national level than our state level. I couldn't see in the reason is why this makes it unique to the state of Washington, why this should be approved. What makes us unique in the other states that have used this, and why this should be approved at this time. Haven't seen enough data to be able to justify this yet. Besides some of the reviews, just what the statements have been said so far. So I'm not sure I really support this change yet at this time. So because of life safety issues, I believe there's still a life safety issue on this. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Hoyt. Let's go to Ken. Welcome.
Hi. So not too sure if this was supposed to be a code change proposal to the WAC or to the International Building Code 2024 edition, because 510.2 number 1 and number 2 had changes to it, and you're not showing those changes in the 24 language. So I don't know if you're crossing those out, but I think your code change proposal needs to get fixed to either include it, the language, and keep it, or show that you're deleting it. And then under number 8.
Hey, Ken, just real quick, Dustin, can you grab the screen back and maybe show us that, please?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Ken, go ahead.
Well, in addition, I think that the picture that was just up is kind of deceiving, because it says group R occupancy, and the proposal under 8.4 only talks about an R2 occupancy is allowed, or shall be R2 occupancy. So the screen was kind of, I'm thinking, oh, I guess I can have an R1 based on that picture. So I just trying to figure out what was the reasoning to only allow an R2 and not an R1 or another R type occupancy, because in the beginning in number 5, it says, the building or buildings above the horizontal structure shall be permitted to have a group A, B, M, R, and S occupancy. How come it's R2 specific for this type of construction? Thanks.
Okay, and that rolls right into John and Micah. Maybe if you want to address that, go ahead, or whatever. So John.
No, I didn't want to try to address it.
Well, I'll put it out there because it was part of the discussion with some of the Seattle contingent, but I won't blame or put that on you, John. So
no, it was more of a discussion that we had, about saying, well, limit it to the type that you're really after. What's the goal here? The goal is housing, so let's limit it to the housing issue and not worry about the other types of Rs. I think it was, as I recall the discussion. I did have a question more for you, Todd. You mentioned the substitution in type 1 construction that I guess that maybe some projects have been doing, and I'm not familiar with those. So I was wondering if you knew what's the extent of those? You said there was some, but it's not. Is it a whole floor? Are we talking, one section, one room? Was the mass timber? And 2, did they require like modeling and things like that for the whole building and that kind of thing to look at the fire performance?
Yeah, and I'll share one, and let me just think for a second here and make sure this is all public knowledge, but it's out there. There's some of the testing that was done at FPR, at the Forest Products Lab, in Madison for, I think was the Ascent Tower. That's the one that's coming to mind in particular, where there's a desire to put some columns on the exterior around obviously a 20 or so story building that's primarily a concrete building by all the lateral system and most of the gravity system. And then there was, around the perimeter, then inclusion of some mass timber floor. And the columns, and the reason I bring that example up is that that one went to a 3-hour, where there was some preliminary testing at FPL on 3-hour char. I say that to make sure that it's understood that that wasn't under load, but to better understand on these very large column sections, we're seeing 28, 32, 36-inch square columns, which seems, pretty extreme, but at the same time that meets, kind of that intent of what would an exposed surface, with the char. And I think maybe part of my comment was more philosophical in the sense that, and John, you were at the table, when the ad hoc committee was looking at this, I think there was a lot of assumption that the goal was to put mass timber everywhere and then start to add performance layers to it for that encapsulation. And I think I was just trying to make a shift to, there also is kind of a hybridization we're seeing across the industry, whether it's steel, concrete, and mass timber, where the first goal isn't always let's make the whole building out of mass timber. Let's use the appropriate materials where, and in this case, I think as many of you know, especially on the structural side, when we do these two-part buildings, these two-phase approaches on the structural side, we need that stiffness change, and often that concrete transfer deck is doing both gravity and horizontal transfer to then a significantly stiffer building on the bottom. That's the requirement. And so if someone were to approach this, it really can't be heroic. It's going to have to be a very rational approach of how you transfer those loads down anyway. And in my opinion, it's probably transferring to concrete walls or heavy steel braces anyway. But I think the other part of that is kind of why Type 4B that RISE was looking at. It also starts to now contemplate and give us a little better understanding of what a compartment performance is in a residential with smaller openings that don't have the same heat release versus larger office or retail type spaces. So all that is kind of thought through here for feedback. That's probably a long answer to your short question, John, but thank you. Go ahead, Micah.
I appreciate the revision on this. Still lots of questions and concerns. I agree with Ken. The charging language is not accurate to the 2024, but I think that's a minor issue that can be resolved. But there's some major issues that still, from the proponent, has not been answered. And I agree with Hoyt on this. I think Hoyt provided a great testimony in that this should be vetted more at the national level than Washington. I'm not sure it's particular to Washington, and that we need to advance it. One of the big items here is that for the 1A current provisions, they provide for both rating and non-combustible construction for the benefit of resetting that story count, height, area type of construction, all those type of things. The RISE test that you all cite in here doesn't account for the equivalent non-combustible construction. It does for the rating. So I'm not sure where you're still getting the justification that we should be doing this or allowing the exposed mass timber ceilings of this. Another part, if we want to look at the proposal itself, the exception to item 2, you probably should add that the additional requirements of 510 2.8 are met, not just that the conditions of 510 2.8 are met. There are other conditions in 510.2 already that probably should apply to this no matter what. Just a couple other things. It really is coming down to the RISE testing. I'm not sure that you're providing equivalency here, and I know that's kind of the discussion. Maybe we shouldn't provide equivalency, but what's the justification for that benefit then to reset story height, count, all those type of things? I see where you're wanting to go with this proposal. I'm just not quite sure that it's ready, and I think it does need some of that more national level exposure and questions, and I just don't think that the testing is adequate for us to, advance this far under this proposal at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. And Dustin, maybe you can scroll down a little bit. I think the idea of addition in there, by the way, additional is a good, would be good.
You go back up to that first one. It was the additional.
Oh yeah, if you want to, we could actually type it in there if you want.
Yeah, that was in exception 2, or the exception to 2.
Dustin, do you
constructions
provided the additional conditions? Do you mind adding that? Did you freeze up, Dustin?
I muted myself and did not unmute myself. Give me a little bit of direction on where that one's going to go in here.
Second line of the exception, I think Mike is proposing add the word additional conditions before conditions, additional. Right there. And then as we scroll down, I think Hoyt and Micah, I'll respond a little bit to the national level versus the state level. Part of this is not denying that it's always better to have more and more input, but also Washington and Oregon, I think most of us know, are leading in a lot of these areas, and not just in the jurisdictional and kind of political realm, but in the technical realm. Our strengths at Washington State University, Oregon State University, our coalition, our technical, public-private coalitions that have been around since 2014. I would argue we actually are very capable of proposing this type of amendment, and that even at the national level, we as states are likely leading in this discussion. So it's not avoidance of that process. As you know, the couple of the previous attempts were very simple, straightforward, type 4A. I'm thinking of Dennis Richardson the last time around. He wasn't representing AWC at the time in that petition, but this kind of discussion has gone forward, and it's always been about that equivalency rather than what are we really trying to achieve here. We're not trying to achieve unlimited area. We're not trying to achieve, obviously the high-rise building. So is there new learnings from not only the rise testing, but also just our technical advancements in the last 5 years since this was last raised to consider these. So can you scroll down more, Dustin, and then we'll kind of leave it to the tags here to whether there's more discussion or you want to take any type of action on this. Go ahead, Roger.
Well, I want to just offer my opinions, and Mike, I'm not sure why you and I are offering very alternate opinions so far today, but I will remind people that state of Washington adopted the type 4 A, B, and C ahead of the international, the ICC. I agree with Todd. We are the leaders in the industry on mass timber. So as far as adopting it before the national, I don't have any concerns whatsoever. The other thing that I wanted to point out, as far as the commercial demand for this type of a product, is you saw on the diagrams that were shown, there are 7 and 8 stories, and I recognize that this is for the Puget Sound area for the most part, maybe Spokane, but densification is a huge issue. And how we get from a 6-story, 7-story up to an 8-story is always a challenge. So I believe that providing as many possible solutions to an 8-story building as possible to design teams and developers is very important. And certainly when we start talking about cost of housing and how we continue to densify and build more housing at a reasonable cost, throw in the low income or middle income or whatever you want in that grouping, I think that this proposal could be very helpful and provide opportunities. And I've been involved in the fires and, performance-based fire design on mass timber buildings. I've been, I've seen the arguments that Todd's put forward here about, and Joe had put forward about the restrictions that they are putting on that you're seeing on the screen there. So I'm very supportive of this proposal. I think that it could be a great tool for the state of Washington. It feels to me like we have addressed the concerns that people have, and what are they, the additional requirements that we just of Section 8 there that you see are pretty clearly set out. And originally this proposal, it wasn't exactly clear what those additional requirements are. I think at this point, we've made it pretty darn clear. If you're going to do this, these, what are they, 8 things have to be, you have to adhere to these 8 things. So.
Thank you, Roger. Mike again.
I think it just happens that way sometimes, Roger, that we disagree. We did we're an early adopter of the provisions. However, I don't think they took into account what we're trying to do here today. And if they did, there was a reason they didn't bring those forward. I think this, again, goes a little too far. I don't think we're seeing as many 4A and 4B buildings yet to where you can justifiably say this is going to be another savior for affordable housing. We shouldn't throw out safety just for affordable housing. I think that keeps coming up on things we should just eliminate just because there's an affordable housing issue. I know that sounds crass, but that's just my opinion. I don't see there's justification yet for all this. Some of the testing, yes, maybe we're getting closer. I don't think we're there yet. Again, I'm not saying I'm opposed to this. I'm opposed to some of it, and I think we're advancing it a little too quickly. Another thing that I believe was previously discussed in this proposal was talking about the columns. In 8.3 of this proposal, it allows to have unprotected columns and beams. Now, if you have a podium, usually those are going to have serious or significant open spaces. You're talking about supporting a 3-hour horizontal assembly with exposed mass timber columns. Your RISE test, or any testing at this point, did not take that into account. There hasn't been 3-hour exposed column testing at all. So again, I think you're trying to justify it for certain reasons, but overall, I don't think you're there yet, and I think there's some things that still need to be addressed. Thanks.
Hey, Micah, just on that point, since the fire tag did hear previous discussions, by the requirement of a 3-hour fire resistant rating on those, and because a calculated method is not yet approved for that, that automatically dictates that it would require a manufacturer to go to a 3-hour fire resistant rating through testing. But that may or may not be what you meant in a compartment.
Or not.
Sorry, go ahead.
Whether that column is exposed or not would require you to go that 3-hour testing. But
In my opinion, it would. Are you disagreeing with that would require that?
I'm looking at your 8.3 here that would allow exposed columns without.
Yeah, if those are 3-hour columns, it would require testing.
Doesn't say that.
Well, it says that. I mean, we could trace it through to the IBC where it allows. It says by calculated or testing. Since calculated's off the table, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
I can tell you from experience, Micah, if you try to go 3-hour columns, you have to do testing.
Okay.
And that's the same on the separation too. That's going to require testing.
Allows something different than that requirement.
Mike, I can tell you what happens is the limit on how you calculate char says that it's limited to 2-hour. So anytime we've talked about people, well, we can calculate the 3-hour rating by a char calculation and show it to you. The standard, and I don't know what it is off the top of my head, of how you calculate char was limited to 2-hour. That doesn't mean that there isn't a technical reason why it was limited to 2-hour, but that limit is on there. So if you're going to 3-hour, you would have to do your own testing, whether it's covered or not.
It could, quite frankly, say it for current state. It could say it right in there. it just would block out future, potential models if someone wanted to develop. So go ahead, John.
Just want to add for the record, yes, the state did adopt the provisions early for tall buildings, but they were fully vetted or 99% vetted at national before we did that. So that there is a difference there.
Yeah, thank you, John. We haven't heard any from anyone for the fire tag yet. But, okay,
This is Bill
If
Davis.
not,
If I can
then-
interrupt, I just joined the meeting.
thank you, Bill. Okay, well, go ahead, Michael.
I had kind of a different direction on a comment here. I just wanted to make a comment on section 8.8, the interior exit stairway pressurization. The last sentence, for the purpose of this section, legally required standby power shall comply with NEC 701 options C, D, E, F, H, and J. We have a similar requirement in section 504.4.1, which in an earlier meeting, we accepted a code change proposal in proposal 114 that took out the C, D, E, F, H, and J and put in specific information. If this were to move forward, should that same information be reflected here to be consistent with that? And so that was proposal 114 earlier this year. Sorry, I don't know which date we approved it, but it's identical language, and we changed it in the one location. Seems like if this were to move forward, it should change here as well. Obviously, if it doesn't move forward, then no harm, no foul.
Sure. Good point. Thank you, Mike. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, go ahead, Micah.
Sorry, I keep going back to my list again. There's so many things. I believe 8.7, the occupiable roof language was modified, and I don't believe that is necessary for the occupiable roof of 50 or more. I think that's already a given in the code elsewhere, but not a major. Just something to point out for correlation. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, then this is a petition in front of us. The TAG should take action. This is really the last chance, so we can entertain go ahead. A motion either way.
I'm gonna make a motion to deny this code change proposal.
Okay. And we can approach it that way, Hoy. Go ahead, Ken.
Is this just the IBC tag voting on this?
I think formally we have to at least clear the IBC vote, but I think it's relevant to get both tags to weigh in. So if that's by vote, that's okay. It's not
Well, that's
formally
why I'm asking is everybody voting or not? I mean, yes or no? I'm just trying to find out if I'm supposed to second this or not.
It's a little unclear on that one since we have two groups and two quorums established here.
Hey, Justin, just sorry to interrupt you. What happened once before that I was on a meeting on a different place, you would actually have each committee vote independently. So you actually have to have a quorum for the fire and the building. We don't combine them. That's what's happened. That's what's happened I saw on a national level in one of the meetings I was in when they had a combined thing. We don't vote together. We still vote separately, even though our meeting is combined to talk about it. That's what's been my experience on this.
Okay, go ahead, Roger.
I'm gonna, similar to what Hoyt said, I think this is a IBC code change proposal. So I think the first order of business would be, the IBC tag approving or disapproving it. We certainly have asked for comments from the IFC tag. I'm actually not sure then if this would go to the IFC tag or where that overall approval would occur. So I'm unclear about that, but I think let's come back. The proposal is for an IBC, change for the IBC. So first order business is, I would say, the IBC tag, and then if we wanted to open it up for an IFC tag vote, that's
Yeah.
to be TBD.
Okay. Well, and what I'll say is, since we anticipate a split vote on this, Hoyt, would you be opposed to changing the motion to the affirmative, and then a failed split vote means denial? As we reread our RCW, if it doesn't have the majority, it is denied.
So you mean you want me to make a motion to approve it?
Well,
I'd rather not make that a motion. I'll let someone else.
okay, that's fine. That's fine. We can do
it.
it. We can do it in denial. I get what you're saying. Is there a second on the denial?
This is Tim. I'll second that motion.
Okay. So we'll do a roll call on this. Is there any discussion? There's been a motion and a second to deny this petition.
I'll
ahead,
just
Tim.
maybe throw in some rationale for my sake, if nothing else. I appreciate the stuff that got added because it really did, resolve the concerns I had the last time we heard this. I think as I dug into both the provisions we had to change Section 510, it became clear that this was only in one model code. This was in the uniform code. So we had it out here on the West Coast for seemingly ever, but it wasn't even in the other two model codes, which was the BOCA and then I think it's Southern Building Code or something to that effect. So as far as that level of vetting before we change something that really sounds like it struggled to ever even make it into the IBC, it just puts some extra weight, at least that I feel, on my shoulders to try to make sure that we don't expand those provisions without proper information and a really, really, really robust vetting period.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Okay. It's been moved and seconded to deny petition 089. Let's go through the roll call, please, on the IBC.
Okay. I'm messing it up here on my spreadsheet, so I'll go back and do that. Joe Mayo,
Nay.
Tim Woodard,
Aye.
Lance Dahl,
Aye.
Hoyt Jeter,
Aye.
Todd Sullivan's not here. Bill My Bush, Bill, you're still with us? You're not unmuted, Bill, if you've cast a vote. All right, I'll come back to Bill. Josh Mergens,
Abstain.
Michael Shaw,
Aye.
Michael Barth,
Aye.
Paul Clark,
Aye.
and Andy Lanto's not here. Bill My Bush, are you with us yet?
Sorry, I had to step away for a minute. Aye.
All right, with that one, the motion to deny this proposal passes 7-1 with one abstention.
Okay, well, that makes it clear then. So thank you everyone for hearing that, and thank you for the IFC tag. We'll move on to agenda item 6, which is the carbon monoxide. So that's petition 071. Ken, were you going to lead us on this? Go ahead.
I have a quick question on this one. We did make a modification to this one. Since we're denying it, should I include a revision 5 in our final package moving forward? Or is it okay to just leave the revision 4 as is?
I guess technically we could, sure.
Okay, well, let me I'll just save as and I'll add it in there.
Okay.
All right, 071 coming up.
Okay.
So Todd, while he's bringing that up, so let me just give you a recap on what I know on the next proposal. On the 12th, the IBC tag at the 2 hour and 6 minute and 50 second mark approved the petition. The next day on the 23rd, the BFRW approved the petition revision 2 to go to full council. And back on the 12th, you'd made a comment, and I agreed to it, that I would work on any of the changes for the public comment period meeting and try to clean anything up that was addressed by the building code tag. I had no idea this was going to be happening today. I saw the fire code tag meeting canceled yesterday. I saw the email that said there's a joint meeting today, and then I pull up the agenda and it says it's the IBC tag meeting. So I was thoroughly confused on what's going on. I didn't know that we were going to try to make changes now. I was under the impression that everybody agreed that I was going to try to tweak it at the public comments, but it's already gone through by the tag once, and now it's back at the tag again. So I'm just lost.
Ken, I think your comments are accurate, but except can you help us better understand the IFC proposal went through, and what does that mean? If I understood your comments at the IBC, that this proposal was different and not correlated, but help us understand that, please.
Well, my understanding is the IPC at 2:06 and 50 seconds said you were okay with that proposal that was changed, that got rid of the word existing. The revision 2 that got sent or approved by the BFRW did not have that change. So
again, I think, wasn't that the IFC proposal? I thought we tabled the IBC.
No,
proposal.
it was voted 2:06 and 50 seconds. I went through and
maybe my memory's not
so
too good here.
I'm not ready to, I mean, as the proponent, I was under the impression that the IBC committee approved it and we're moving on, and I was going to try to change this language at the public comment section. And so I don't know what we're doing here. Yeah, I'm just a little confused, and so I mean I just don't know what's going on here. I thought I was going to give some time to you know, get ready for the public comment, make the changes after what the committees has done, but now we're right back to a joint committee meeting, which I didn't even know was going to happen after the fire code got canceled. And we got the notice that, hey, you're having a joint committee meeting. And then I click on it and it only says it's the IBC meeting. It doesn't show it as a joint meeting. So I thought that, okay, maybe the message got sent out wrong, that it's only IBC meeting today. And then I pull it up and, oh, there's the agenda. So
now you're confusing me, Ken, but I think you're raising a point here. So let's unpack this. Hoyt, go first, please.
I think Mike was up first, so I might as well just go in order.
Okay, that's fine. Michael, go ahead.
I don't know. I think Hoyt was, but I was just going to comment that my scribbled notes are consistent with what Ken is saying here. I'm showing that last week we approved as modified to move it to the full hearing. So I don't have.
So we could go on a correlation at the council level.
Yeah,
that might be true, Mike. And if so, apologize. I, for some reason, remember we tabled it thinking we were going to finish on Thursday, and therefore that this was going to move forward to, as we're going to table it to bring into correlation. But go ahead, Dustin. You probably can tell us.
I think that's true. We did table it, but then we jumped back into it, and then ultimately had the more conversation, and then the approve is modified. If my notes are correct.
So
go ahead, Dustin.
On this particular one, looking back at my notes for the last IBC only tag meeting, I have it as a recommend adopt as amended at that meeting for revision number 3. When we heard it at the BFRW committee, we brought that one forward. It was discussed to have it worked on among the public comment period. I think this speaks to some of the concern that Micah brings up about correlation happening, sooner than later. And the reason we're bringing it back here today is because what was approved at the committee or at the IBC tag was not what was approved by the fire code tag. And so we're trying to accommodate some of that correlation by bringing these groups here together today to view these proposals. Speaking to the notice that went out, as far as the email notification, it should have said IBC and IFC group. When you look at it online, some of the stuff built into our website doesn't allow for us to, it's pre-built to have IFC tags and IBC tags. It's not set up for us to quickly and easily include a combined tag on the web page. So if you click onto the web page, it likely says that it's just an IBC tag meeting, and we're trying to get stuff out appropriately. We sent out the notice. The agenda indicates it's an IBC IFC tag meeting. And so I can understand the confusion though, if you're clicking one thing and it says one thing when you're expecting another. So we can get stuff set up like that. We just didn't have the time to build the website appropriately to show on the web on the site for this meeting that it is a joined tag. It's not something that we have all the time, and when we are combining the tags, it's usually not always the same tags going together. So to have them all the options available for us to have conjoined tag meetings, it's a little more of a process to get that out there. So I will apologize that there's a little bit of confusion on the notice going out with the cancellation of the solo tag meeting from the IFC today. I'm trying to coordinate all this happening, and there's room for, I guess, confusion going on. So but we're trying to go here, and if it is the will that this goes to CR 102 and the correlation and any further modifications for the IFC tag to sign off on happens after CR 102 is filed and public comment is happening, I think that is okay, but we're trying to get ahead of the game on that one. And that's all I'd like to say on that one. So there you
go. Okay, thank you, Dustin. Tim.
Tim, you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry, I'm sure you called on me. I had legal step into my office. So I was just going to comment that maybe the most productive thing, if we're going to discuss this, is to pull up the changes to the IFC's proposal just to see if they agree to it. But I'm totally comfortable, but the one that's on the screen doesn't even show anything new, so IFC wouldn't know what those changes were.
Go ahead, Roger.
I agree with Tim. I think we're here, and I seem to remember after Dustin reminded me that was what we were talking about is, all right, IBC proved it. I thought we made a couple of minor changes, but because we were getting the IFC tag, let's at least let them know what those changes were. I'm also fine if we just at this point, that if the IBC passes something that's a little bit different than IFC, then that is the correlation that has to happen either probably during the public comment period.
So this here, I believe, is the change, the and existing. And anything else that's changes should be highlighted in red in this document.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, Dustin, now I remember once you showed that and it refreshed my memory. That's what we wanted to make sure that this was put in for existing buildings, also carbon monoxide detection system.
Okay, Micah?
That wasn't the only change that I had concerns with. And I think that's where it ended up being that it needed work. And that was related to the power source. It's striking the IBC language or the IFC language in chapter 11 that allows for battery operated, and moving the power source information into 915.4.1.1, where it no longer allows for battery connected carbon monoxide detectors in existing structures. They're required to be wired. That's where there's this discrepancy, I think, that Ken talked about coming back in public comment, furthering this issue. If we want to address it today, then we need to look at the 915.4.1 language and the strike through of chapter or 11 language further down in the proposal from the IFC that removes any allowance for battery operated carbon monoxide detectors in existing buildings where they were not previously installed. The new requirement is a retroactive code change that allows or requires hard wiring of carbon monoxide detectors. Thanks.
Okay, Tim?
The only other change that I recall us making was to the definition of carbon monoxide. There was something like normal and abnormal conditions. We just said any production of carbon monoxide, something to that effect.
In the document I have here today, it's got the revision 3 being compared to it. I did not make the change. I know we talked about it, but I don't think we modified that in this proposal. But I guess that's why we're here as the two groups to correlate these changes.
Okay. So Ken, as a proponent here, what do you suggest? Do you want to talk more about this in this joint meeting, or
Well,
I think your previous request was to take time and do it.
It's just tough to see your proposal not showing the changes that were done, you know, at the tag level, because now it just looks like everything that's there is just came from me. So it's like it doesn't show that or existing gets removed. I don't know, and this is the reason I thought I had more time to work on it. I wanted to look at the 1103.9 and see if it should just go back and not get struck, and just make sure the references are okay to take care of the existing that would take care of what Micah's concerns were with the battery. And I just didn't do the deep dive yet because I really thought that I was going to be doing this public comment. And Dustin, I love you to death, but the agenda only says IBC at the top of it. If you wanted to scroll up and look at the agenda, it doesn't show both. When I click on agenda, it doesn't show both. It only says International Building Code Technical Advisory Group and all interested parties. So that's why I was so confused and not, thinking that this was going to be an issue. I just thought that it was accidentally got put on the agenda since this committee already approved the revision 3 that removed the existing. And when it didn't go on the fire code, and there was no fire code tag yesterday, so I thought, okay, well, they're not going to talk about the revision 3. So I'm just not prepared. I would rather just try to take care of it, public comment, and see if I can explain anything, and then let the council turn it down if they want to turn it down then. And but yeah, I just wasn't ready. I think there's some things that I can do to it, but if the two committees want to work through it and make suggestions, that's great. And then I'll make my public comment suggestions at public comment.
What do we need for that to happen? Would that be appropriate for me to make a motion, Dustin, that we just move this forward to CR 102?
Yes.
Or have we already?
You already did.
So I don't think there's any issue, but can I actually think, putting in a public comment, okay, since we've already approved it, I think putting in your public comment to make the changes to make it better will probably get approved too, in my experience. The other thing is we're hoping also, because it's IFC also, so the fire tag has to actually do it else. So if it comes through where the fire tag part ends up, you know, because it affects both codes, and they make some changes, I'm sure in the correlation things we could get that correct. But you know, I would, you know, I mean, I think it would be easier for you to just put it through a public comment, and it'll just get approved that way. I guess there's a possibility it could be denied at a public comment, but I don't think so. That's my opinion.
And I'm sorry, I'd still like, I mean, it's still got to go to the BFRW again for this entire package. So I can address this maybe at that meeting too. So just give me a little bit more time. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, that would be great. Let's go ahead and address it at that thing, because, you know, it doesn't make sense to turn it down or do the things at this time. The principle is there. We like the changes that were there. It made sense. You know, it seems like you would be easy to be able to get that fixed at that time. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I would kind of recommend.
I guess my issue is that the revision 2 already got moved forward by the IFC. Revision 3 already got moved forward by the IBC. It just not that revision 3 hasn't gone to BFRW yet. So the BFRW will hear revision 3. So which overrules?
I guess that's what we're trying to address here today, is to make sure that we don't have, I guess, competing versions of the same proposal going forward. But, you know, I think it's totally addressable at the BFRW committee level. You know, the idea of bringing it here today, outside of the noticing confusion, is to make sure that the revision that the building code tag made was also okay with the fire code tag.
Okay, Roger.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, this is the perfect example of correlation that has to happen. The IFC passed one thing, the IBC passed something different, slightly different, and it is minor wording. As far as the hierarchy goes, the BFRW committee can make modifications. The council can make modifications, both at the meeting in January when we're going to pass the whole thing along, or after the public comment period, which is going to be towards the end of next year. So assuming that at this point, both tags have approved both proposals, and yes, correlation has to happen. It can happen this Friday if we want to, or it can happen either at the council meeting in January or later on throughout the process.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Revision 3 already approved by building code tag. The fire code tag has not reviewed revision 3.
Correct.
So are you set, Mr. Chair, to have the fire code tag right now review revision 3 and approve it to match it up? Is that what the goal was here?
Yeah, well, that's one scenario. Technically, Ken, I think it's sitting in the package that has yet to be approved today. So we wanted to give it one last touch so everybody's on the same page of the situation we're in and come up with a plan like we're doing now, what to do. Now, it took me a while to get there, but if the very least we could all walk away with an understanding that there's a difference, that might be what we achieved today. Go ahead, Micah.
Thanks. I didn't remember that the building code tag approved any revision. I know we talked about it, but again, if they've approved it and the fire code has approved it, then my comment will have to come in at public comment hearing. Hopefully it doesn't destroy this whole proposal. But again, we should all be aware that we passed something that's retroactive, that requires hard wiring, that it did not do before. That was the biggest issue, and I thought that was being addressed at the IBC tag last Thursday. So again, I don't remember any approval for this entire package because no changes were made to the power source issue. I had understood what Ken understood, that we'd have time to modify this and review the power source issue. Ken and I discussed it at the tag that way. So I remember the same way as Ken did, is I don't remember the stuff being approved. And then we had a chance to modify that power source issue that was in question. Thanks.
So Mike, if I understand your comment, I mean, again, if this was recommended, and that's what I'm remembering and hearing here, it's sitting in the package right now. We can open it up right now if there's specific changes we want to make, is my understanding. And then we can move the package forward out of the tag into the BRFW or BFRW.
Sure. I think the proponent is saying that we're not prepared to make those changes.
And that's okay. And then we're saying we want to move the package forward and take it to the committee and potentially address it there on Friday, or potentially address it in higher level correlation with the council.
You could definitely do that as the tag and ignore the proponent or the person with concerns for sure.
Yeah. Like I say, at the very least, we have an understanding going into BFRW on Friday that this could be potential action if phrased. Okay, go ahead, Tim.
I was just gonna say, we did move this along. We did pass it under the provisions. If I remember right, I made Ken promise me that he was gonna look into this, and he's doing that. So I see no reason to reopen it. He's gonna take care of the one provision that we're really concerned about, and I say we keep moving this forward.
Thanks, Tim. Sorry, it was you that I thought Todd said it, but yes, it was Tim. I did promise you that I would do this, and I will try to put something together by Friday and get it submitted ahead of time. So we have one revision that will go through that's got the changes that I promised I would try to make. So
okay, is everyone comfortable with that then? Dan or others, do you have any other IFC input?
I just wanted to say that if we're gonna move revision 2 and revision 3 forward, I don't think we need any motions or voting on this particular proposal today.
I agree.
I agree too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, unless there's any other discussion, then I think we're taking no action today on petition 071. And we understand that we will raise this at the committee level assuming this passes through and with the package today. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. We accomplished something. Okay, the last joint petition that we want to talk about here today is the 066, the fixed guideway transit.
And this one is the one that I have a revision 1 posted. But yesterday we got a revision number 2 there. And so if we want to characterize what might be changed in those revisions, Ken, you have your hand up?
yeah, I do, because this is the perfect time to bring it up because I brought it up at the last meeting. This affects the fire code. Fire code has an entire chapter for this. We do not have a proposal at all for the fire code for this chapter. So and again, in the fire code tag did the work. We went through it. We said that it needed to get worked on in the fire code, the chapter, to make sure that it got correlated and updated to the 2023 version of NFPA 130. That did not happen. We dropped the ball on that. The building code tag didn't do it. The fire code tag didn't do it. So I understand that's not Mark Murray's responsibility in here, but this code change proposal should have, though, included the IFC chapter that for NFPA 130, and it does not. So I think this still needs work.
Go ahead, Mark. Are you trying to speak?
Yes, I'm here. I think it's fair that in Ken's point, we need to address it in the fire code as well. Yes, I wasn't so clear on the process. Given that these are building code issues, I think that we have forgotten that they're repeated in the fire code. So we didn't make a proposal on the fire code. I did make a change based on the feedback from Thursday. However, you want to scroll down to the separation section. There was some question about it's down further, right there. Yeah. So the 5242 and 5245. Previously, actually, this is not Rev 2. This is Rev 1. So
yeah, this is the So let me bring up the other one that we
Yeah,
have.
yeah, thank you, appreciate that. So this is the language we discussed on Thursday, and there was some feedback about the referral back to the building code, and there was potentially some confusion about it. I started thinking about how to do this more elegantly, and the reality is Chapter 509, Chapter 5 of the building code applies to light rail. The Sections 508 and 509 apply. And there's no reason to point back to those. There's no exception in the building code that says they don't apply to light rail. So what I did is I simply just added a section that would supplement the building code, and that is to require a 1 hour fire separation between these two areas for enclosed stations. So the building code applies, and this also applies. So this would exceed the building code requirement if someone were to go down a pathway and find a solution using non-separated occupancies, for example, they would still need to provide at least a 1 hour separation between the back of house areas and the public areas in an enclosed station. And so this addresses exactly what I was trying to do before. This is Sound Transit's practice to do it this way. And my point is to try to just get this in the code so it's really easy for plans examiners to see and understand. Enclosed stations, as I mentioned before, is a defined term. It's a term that's used in the code, and it captures tunnel stations and other stations that, are largely enclosed such that smoke and hot gas would not easily move out of the station through natural ventilation. So those are the changes. I didn't change anything else. I think this was I believe this may have been the only issue remaining. The only other thing that's in here from the original proposal was at the bottom was to actually reflect that, we want to change the Chapter 35 to note that we're adopting the 2023 code.
3:45 this afternoon. Middle school and high school. That fast? I was not. I thought it was going to be really good. I thought it was when I picked up there.
Hey, Mark, are you still speaking or?
Yeah, I thought it sounded like there was some background noise there.
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can just scroll down a little bit more, you'll see that the only other section that I changed from the previous, and it's right there. Yeah. So I just added that to make note that we are adopting the 2023 version as part of the building code, and put the standard language in there about where provisions exist in the building code. So that's just housekeeping. That's it.
Okay. Go ahead, Roger. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, it seems to me like it's obvious that this does need work, and certainly if we're finding out at this stage of the game that we should have looked in the fire code previously. I believe that there is one issue that we are going to send on to the council, knowing that that's an outstanding issue, and Dustin, correct me, I don't remember what it was exactly. But we've identified one proposal that we know will be lagging behind, and we need to continue to look at. Do you remember which one that was?
I believe that was going to be the 089 one that we denied earlier today.
Okay. Well, I think that, we just flagged this knowing that approve the whole rest of the package. And in my mind, if we have to have the council take special action to say, we understand this particular proposal, didn't go through the proper review, so it needs to be done, and we break that out. We do that, and we address it both at the IBC and IBC tags after the rest of the phase group 1 proposals are approved by council.
I think you're right, Roger, and I guess I'll raise the question to both tags. Is there any concern with pursuing that pathway? Presumably that would look like maybe even the committee or the council moving back down, and requesting tag input once it got to that level.
Sorry to interrupt, but Mark, can you mute your mic? I think that's the background that's coming through.
So I guess I was asking primarily to the fire tag, is there any concern about if the IBC were to move this forward to the committee level so that we could then seek that additional proposal into the fire code, assuming there's a pathway.
So while we've been talking, I went back to review the reports section of our code adoption process. So in our existing amendments report, chapter 49 in the fire code, we have the note there to modify the existing amendment to align with the more updated version of NFPA 130. And I recall the conversation there being pretty robust, and Walker, who I think is still on this call, was the one who did a lot of the work, kind of outlining what those changes in the updated NFPA document were. And I don't think that we called for a specific proposal on this one, because we determined that the changes that we were looking to make there were editorial. And what I have in my note here is minor modifications to the existing state amendment will be necessary to align with the 2023 edition, and that we wanted to reorganize the section so that it aligned with the NFPA document organization. So we had some work done there in the existing amendments report part of our process. And so it was intended to update the NFPA 130 content, but we didn't call for a specific proposal, because we had made the determination that it was going to be more of an editorial change to update the NFPA 130.
Dustin, that reminds me, 3 years ago when we went through this process, and I put a proposal into both the fire code and the building code, and the two tags approached it a bit differently. And the content was identical and it was approved like both tags, but the formatting of each tag is done very differently. And I think that might be what's leading to that correlation issue now.
Okay.
I guess I just wanted to step in based on the new revisions, and I have no idea where we're at with everything, but I do appreciate the changes that were made, and I think that was kind of what we were trying to communicate before, is why we were specifying those separations when that was already a requirement. So I think by the changes that are made in this latest revision, it satisfies my concerns about why we were making those changes to begin with. And since those are the only issues I had left outstanding, I think I'm in a position now where I think what we have here is the proposal, although it needs to be correlated, although it needs to go into 35 of the IFC. I don't know how any of that stuff happens. I just wanted to speak to the actual changes and say that I think I can be in support of what this latest modification shows.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
And I agree with Tim.
Okay, thank you. Wait, go ahead, Walker.
So yeah, Dustin, I did run with it for the fire tag. So would this be a correlation process? I mean, just seeing them for the first time today, I think Mark's proposed changes make sense, but would that be, Mark and I correlating to pick up corresponding changes in the fire code?
I mean, that could be the preliminary part of that, yes. The last note on our existing amendments report there is that to correlate with IBC Chapter 3116. And so if that could happen there, that would be nice. And then, as we get to the correlation part of this, most of the changes to update NFPA 130 were considered editorial. And so I'm not sure I hadn't envisioned the process for this one in particular. But if there's more correlation that needs to happen, as pointed out earlier in the meeting, we can strategize how to accomplish that. And, we have these proposals, and that's the, point of, talking about them more. So I don't think it would be a violation to correlate them after the filing of CR 102, or before, if we can get the work initiated at that time as well.
Okay, Tim.
I didn't catch it the first read through, but the second read through here on the second one that he changed. So 5.2.4.5. At the end, it says non-system occupancies 1 hour fire barrier. I think it's by 1 hour fire barrier.
That is correct. That may have been a birds that didn't pick that up. Good eye.
Should be by a one.
By a. Yeah, that's how it's captured above.
By a or by at least.
I think we got
Minimum.
I think we got less than or got away from the at minimum or what have you because those other provisions would already apply. So it's almost like, you know, if you enforce separated occupancies and it required 2 hour separation, you wouldn't need to put by a minimum of 1 hour here because it would already have to meet the 2 hour from separated occupancies provisions. So trying to simplify it, and that's kind of what I appreciate about this latest addition.
Okay. Ken?
So Dustin brought up the IFC tag and existing amendments. What about the IBC tag? Did you guys have any existing amendments? Because right now, 5.2.4.3 ancillary spaces, there's a big word that's changed from and to or. And I'm just wondering if that was addressed or not. I mean, it doesn't show up on this, but that is an existing state amendment that the language has been changed in NFA 130. So I'm just wondering if the IBC tag, what did they say about with their existing amendments to NFA 130?
I'm popping it open right now, so give me 1 second. This isn't one of the ones that I downloaded to my desktop today, so it takes a little bit of a second to pop it open. Should be opening up in a second. All right, so for 5150-3116 modifications to NFP 130, we have keep the existing amendment as modified. Oop, and I moved beyond it. I have my cursor somewhere else. Give me 1 second to get back to the spot.
Dustin, I don't think we're seeing it. You're trying
Oh,
to
I
show.
wasn't sharing it. Here, I'll pull it up for everybody to see what I'm looking at. I passed it. This is it right here, this big long section. And so need to renumber the section and correlate with the IFC review of NFPA 130. Considered breaking it out into its own chapter like the Washington IFC and needs to be renumbered to 3115 is the overall motion here. So it looks like the modifications here were just to talk about the changes made for the update to NFPA 130.
So I guess my example is scroll down to 5.2.4.3. And that word at the end of the sentence there between the ASTM and the ANSI UL standard, that and is now an or. So if you consider that editorial, that seems like a significant change. But the 2023 version of NFPA 130, this is just one example, says the word or now. And there are other changes. So I really think that You know, it looks like the IBC tag thought about renumbering it, making it different, correlating to make sure that all NFPA 130 standards that are in WAC 5150 and 5154 are similar. But if that's not what the tags wanted to do, that's fine. But I'm just trying to listen to see what each tag wanted to do. But it kind of sounds like what Dustin, you just said, is that they said make it its own chapter, you know, and none of, and I think it's just one of those chapters that just everything just got missed. And everybody was working so hard to get so many things done that we didn't give this NFPA 130 document a good enough look. And we really need to do that. Just make sure we don't miss anything. I started yesterday going through the entire 130 and all of 4900 and trying to, you know, get it organized correctly and then trying to correlate stuff. And it just takes a little bit more time. And it wasn't something that, you know, I had put on my table of things to get done. So I just think we, you know, if you guys want to move these proposed changes forward, great, but I don't know when all this other work's going to happen and who's going to do it.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Go ahead, Walker.
Ken, I did just want to point out that I had done some more work in June to update the F-tags document to correlate better, did catch the change from U119 and UL263 to OR. So I can send you that, Ken, if you're diving into this one.
No, I get it, but it should have been on, like, it should have been included in this proposal somehow, or should have gotten something out from the tag, because we don't have anything in front of anybody that shows all the work that you did. You did this work, but we don't have a document, a petition that shows the changes from our existing WAC to a new proposed WAC language.
Okay. Yeah, if I missed a step there, please let me know and I'll.
No, I don't think you missed a step. I just think that we messed up as a tag. We should have done like one of our tag proposals with the revisions to the existing WAC, but we just didn't do it.
And I didn't have a chance to review the IBC significant changes report, but I did peek at the IFC one, and we marked this section for no significant changes. And so, you know, I can agree that we may have missed a component there. And I don't know if this is okay to make modifications to the public comment period, or if this needs to be reviewed further before moving to the committee. Yeah, that's my comment.
Okay, Roger.
Well, I am offering my opinions today. My opinion is it's obvious that there's a lot of moving parts on this. We all want to make sure we get it done and get it done right. I think answering Ken's question about when is it going to get done and who will do it is if we send this to the BRFW, then onto the council with, here's the full IBC package. And this proposal, whatever the number is still outstanding and needs work. We know that both the IBC and the IFC have to come back together sometime in January or February and resolve this particular issue. And then we have to go back through the BFRW and the council at a February or March meeting. And it should be a pretty, you know, quick proposal. It shouldn't impact too much, Dustin, on your group 2 work that you're jumping into. If it's only one item, we just flag this for the council. It's outstanding. We, you know, between the 2 tags, we didn't get the correlation done and it really needs to happen. So we just have one straggler. And that way it's clear that, all right, we still need the IBC and the IFC tags to do something in the new year.
Okay. Go ahead, Tim.
Was that a motion, Roger?
Go ahead, Tim. I am the alternate chair, so I can actually make motions.
Well, I just feel like that makes the most amount of sense here. I mean, we're up against the 11th hour and we're accepting of some of these cleanup languages in here. But this proposal shouldn't be held up because we forgot to do a step in the process. So I would like to make a motion to reiterate what Roger said, that we move this forward with a note that there needs to be correlation between the two tags further, and we make sure that correlation happens. And I don't know what the best plan is, but I would make the motion that we keep moving forward.
Second.
Okay, so that was moved and seconded by Tim and Hoyt. Is there any other discussion? Okay, I believe this is an IBC. Oh, go ahead. Okay, I believe this is probably just an IBC tag vote, but well, let's do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with that, petition 066 revision 2 is recommended for approval by the full council. And we understand that that means there's going to be some correlation happening at the committee or the council. Okay, thank you very much for all that. Is there any other business that I'm not remembering between the IEBC and the IFC before we move on to IBC specific tasks? Okay, if not, thank you for the IFC. You're welcome to stick around, obviously, but we're moving into EV charging stations that are specific to the IBC. Go ahead, Patrick.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
I think that's a great suggestion. So let's come back. I'm going to call it 2:47, please. Okay. Thank you. Welcome back. Okay, we're moving into EV charging now. First, we're going to do agenda item 4, which should be brief. There are 2 draft opinions that the BFRW heard last Friday, and they'll take action on Friday. But they're as they're related to these petitions, and there was, if I remember correctly, some question about local jurisdiction input, which is good representation here. I think it was relevant to bring it forward. So do you want to give any more setup there? Dustin, if you're back.
I'm back, but still not unmuted. So I think that we had pretty good setup on this one. I didn't make any draft modifications to this after the discussion on the BFRW committee last week, due to some personal issues and also lack of time. I'll bring up the November 06 one, and then we can discuss November 08. They're same section, but slightly different topics. And so I'll bring them up and we can open discussion there.
Okay, thank you.
So here is November 06. We had, these are the same ones that were, I believe, posted for the BFRW here. Where in the 2018 429.2 of the International Building Code had the language where parking is provided. In 2021, that language just references to the table. And their question is if you have a building with multiple occupancies, are the EV parking requirements only to be applied to the number of parking spaces required by local ordinances? And my draft answer was yes. And I'm trying to get in here to some other stuff I have on from the BFRW. I think we did make some modifications at that meeting, and I want to kind of bring them up just for discussion purposes, and we can move forward because the answers were changing as we drafted these. And if we want to talk about the question one while I pull this up, I guess it's appropriate.
Okay. As everyone skimmed this, do you kind of get the context here? So the discussion is about what is, obviously the building code does not require parking, number of parking spaces. So does local ordinance control, and then when it goes to mixed occupancy, I'll let you read it here. So again, the feedback here is, do you agree with these answers to inform the committee? And so the committee can take action without passing to the council on Friday, or can choose to move it for the full council input and action. Go ahead, Tim.
I'd throw out there that question answer one, absolutely. I don't see what your answer is to question three yet. But the way that plan reviewers, okay. The way that we've dealt with this for years, and I can think of one specific example, which is restroom fixture counts, is you assign basically a decimal point to what's required based on the occupancy. And maybe this is interpretation, maybe it's not, but you don't require one bathroom for each type of occupancy in there. If one required 0.2 restrooms and a different occupancy required 0.2, then you'd combine those and you're still under one. So therefore you'd only require one restroom. If that kind of correlates in people's minds. I don't know if that should be explained in your answering. But I don't know if I agree with a straight yes answer on it.
Okay, that's helpful, Tim. Thank you. And did you get the question three? Did you see that? It's a little hard as it jumps to the next page here, but
I think there we go.
yeah.
Dustin, do you have, I thought that we did edit those at the BFRW.
We
meeting.
did, and at this moment, I am struggling to find them. I think that there may have been an issue with the battery on my computer, and they may be in a recovery folder somewhere. And I'll have to dig them up.
I know that our biggest struggle was, is it based on what's provided or what's required? And at our committee meeting, it was not clear. Particularly because on the required side, Todd brought up that City of Spokane, the requirement is 0. So we kind of felt like we were heading down the direction where it should be provided, but we felt like it needed to go back to this group for clarity. So.
Okay, Micah?
I agree with Roger. I think it did come down to part of that. And I believe I brought up where the code language is not completely accurate with the RCW. And I think that's where we decided to kind of leave it, was the RCW requires that all provided parking be provided with the EV infrastructure. And that was kind of the discussion. So I'm still not sure if I agree with the answer to question 3, where it says would only need to meet the requirements in line with answers to questions 1 and 2. I don't believe that's the intent of the legislation or the requirement of the RCW, which would take precedence over the rule. Thanks.
Okay. So Dustin, we as a tag, we don't take formal action on this, right? We don't need to. It's really to give feedback.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess I'll ask, is there any other feedback then that you think the BFRW committee should consider on Friday.
I
And please
think-
join if you think of any. Yeah.
Just want to say, I'm with Micah. I think question 3 might not be correct. So,
It went what? Wait, I'm sorry, I missed that.
oh, question 3.
Yeah.
Sure that answers the ICC chapter or ICC interpretation. Sure.
I'm having a little trouble hearing White. Maybe
Oh,
others
I'm
again.
sorry. I'm with Mike. I think question 3, the answer that was given, I'm not sure that's a correct interpretation. Some of the hearings and things that I've come across. So,
Okay, Micah.
Thanks. If you want to talk about editing or modifying the draft today, then we probably should start with question 1 and determine if that is accurate. If you want input, I would say that the answer is accurate based on the language of 429.2. However, I believe that the answer is not accurate based on the RCW. Again, it's the whole required or provided. RCW says provided.
Yeah.
I would say that it would be a yes to the required, but we would have to put the caveat in there as it would be yes to all that are provided, regardless of local ordinance based on.
And that's kind of where we landed on Friday, if I remember. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Everyone comfortable with this discussion? We'll try to capture this and make sure it's represented on Friday. Okay. Thank you for that one. Let's move on to the next one, which is for Vancouver.
And this is a similar one. If we made modifications, I don't have one saved from that meeting. It stayed open and I didn't get it updated. So and I do recall Michael mentioned bringing in another bill, the most recent 2021 bill for this one. And we talked about having is EV charging requirements to apply to fleet vehicle areas and vehicle storage areas. And my draft answer was to leave it up to the local official to determine whether or not the areas in question are considered on-site parking. And there's some discussion on that. And open it up for some comment there.
It sounds like it goes back to that required or provided concept again. And it sounds like the RCW says provided. So that would apply to all provided, including fleet vehicles. But possibly 429 says required, which probably wouldn't apply to any fleet vehicles.
And Tim, a lot of our discussion, and I'll go to Micah here then, is the fleet vehicle one. There seemed to be that kind of a consensus interpretation. The vehicle storage threw us a little bit more, whether it was that's tied to a building and should be in the building code. But Micah, go ahead.
No, you're exactly right on that, Todd. That was where it revolved around the most. But to respond to Dustin, the editorial item that we talked about including was the most recent bill based on the RCW, and that would be, of course, I go back to the top of the bill because I was down reading it. Engross second substitute House Bill 1287. And the reason being is because it actually started to define electric vehicle, various terms that we had that are mentioned in the answer and the question that were not defined in the previous bills you have included in the response. Thanks.
Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I also remember that there was a document that that was provided with this, and the city was asking, when it talks about vehicle storage, they were even saying, you know, is it areas where you're offloading cars, you know, offloading from a ship or something, cars, and you're parking cars, does that need to have EVs? And the feeling is probably not, which is why we felt like leaving it up to the building official and tying it to the on-site question was kind of the direction that made the most sense. So.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else on this that we would desire feedback? To give feedback. Okay. Not, thank you for that. Is that good, Dustin?
I think that's good. I've got notes on making some changes here and to go back and catch what we did do in that meeting. I'm gonna have to just go back and watch the video and see the on-screen document because it's not in my auto recover.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And this will be heard on Friday at the BRFW. Okay. Thank you. So let's move into the EV petitions then. So we have, that's agenda item 8, 9, 10, and 11.
And so I guess so we have the International Existing Building Code petition up first. This one I feel is a little easier than the other three that were kind of being talked about side by side. The 24 GP1 123 R1 really just points back to the building code section 429. Give me 2 seconds and I'll get that open for us to discuss.
And if I recall, we did review it and discuss it. We just decided to wait until other action on the other three, or am I wrong on that?
Let me get back to the notes.
In case that section was changed.
Yes.
I think you were right, and we were towards the end of a meeting and knew we were going to have to come back and look at the other three. So
yeah,
we did discuss it, didn't necessarily come to a conclusion. And
okay, because it's on the schedule, let's take a look at it, decide if that's still our action here, and we want to move into the 3 table changes.
So,
and if the proponents are here, feel free to raise your hand if you have anything to add. So as a reminder here, this was then pointing to section 429, which we're going to look at in the other 3 proposals. Go ahead, Tim.
I thought it was more of a courtesy thing that we're going to allow them to try to modify it to capture things such as substantial improvements and other provisions that may have unintended consequences by adopting this. So I thought there was going to be some changes presented in regards to it.
You might be right, Tim. Kathleen's here to help us. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. Kathleen Petrie, King County. We did send a revised proposal to Dustin on the 8th of December.
Okay.
That shows a modification in the section number, because I believe it needs to be 909, and there is an exception, as well as additional argument added.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, please?
So that's my bad not getting this up there for this one. And I believe this was pointed out last week as well that I didn't have it updated here.
Yeah, please just let me know if you'd like me to walk through it. It's pretty simple modification.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
Great.
Please.
Thank you, Todd. Yes, so we've modified the section numbering, and we were asked to consider providing a requirement for an exception for installed chargers. So we did add that exception. Basically, I'll stop there. So we did add that exception. The other request is that we create kind of a loophole or an out for buildings that would incur great hardship. And so we did not add that. And reason being is that EV infrastructure is essential for future provisions. It would kind of it is the important thing really to have inside the building. Installed chargers are important as well, but if you are EV ready is really that primary component that's going to have the impact in the future. And so, if you've got it seems reasonable that if you're doing substantially altered buildings to include some sort of EV ready. If you've got if the existing buildings are never required to provide EV charging infrastructure, then you've got low and medium and market rate renters won't have the option to purchase electric vehicles. And, it's only if you're living in a new building with higher rent, probably, that you're going to have that infrastructure. So it's not really equitable. This doesn't seem appropriate. And so we didn't include that exception. And one other thing I'd like to add, we've heard a lot of testimony over the last several weeks, and very much appreciate your time. And I don't. It would be helpful to hear a little bit more about the conversation with the council attorney that when you discussed the RCW, because that section 3A states, that the rules adopted under this section must exceed the specific minimum requirements established under subsection 2, which does the exemptions for, it has that basic core infrastructure as well as the exemptions for A, M, and E occupancies. So you must exceed that, which means, in the other proposals, we'll provide some testimony relative to that. In all types of residential and commercial buildings, to the extent necessary to support the vehicle program requirements in Chapter 70A.30, which is the zero emission vehicle state standard, and that result in the emissions reductions consistent with 70A.45.020. And that standard states that by 2020, we need to reduce overall emissions of greenhouse gases in the state to 1990 levels, which was 90,500,000 metric tons. And when Ecology produced their 2019 total emissions report, that we had hit 102.1 million metric tons. So we've already gone up in excess of 10%. So we're not hitting our targets. And so I think that level 3 buildings, you don't create an exemption for having to comply or not having to comply with the energy code. I just don't know if it's appropriate here as well. So that is all, but thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Roger?
Yeah, I wanted to give my thoughts on actually all 4 of them. I thought that we had almost gotten through the other 3, and then there were some questions about the RCW and particularly taking some of the exceptions out on one of them, and I don't have the number in front of me. But I've kind of pondered, well, my opinion on all of those 3 is the only changes we would make are because of section 3A of the RCW. And I believe that that is a task that the State Building Code Council should handle. We need to hear testimony from various people saying whether we do or do not need to increase EV parking or not in order to meet 3A. That's, in my mind, that's the State Building Code Council's task to do that with all 4 of these proposals. Thinking about, Patrick had a really good explanation about argument for why we wouldn't need to increase for the residential on, one of the other proposals. I kind of go back and forth with those proposals, but the one that I do think makes complete sense is the existing building. And, if you have a new building, what we're doing is we are talking about how many EV chargers are EV ready. At this point, you could do a major remodel or trying to use the right terminology, a level 3 alteration of a building and not have any EV chargers. So in my mind, this is the one where if you're doing a level 3 alteration, we've added in that you have to comply with the new Washington State Energy Code. So to also at that level of an upgrade of a building would also have to apply, the EV ready. As it stands now, it's not even installing the chargers, you're just making it EV ready. I think that makes a lot of sense and a lot of, it would make the biggest move towards us meeting section 3A of that RCW.
Okay. So we're still talking about the existing, but there's no reason we can't reference the other ones if you do have comments around there, and then we do have to talk about that striking that exception at some point on that third proposal. But I'll move on to Tim here.
Just sticking with the existing building section, I believe that the RCW that's up on the screen's pretty clear about new construction, and I do understand that 3A says to exceed, so maybe you could extrapolate that into existing buildings. But I don't think that we should be using this as rationale to not properly vet through the different ramifications this change would have. And when I look at and heard different arguments about areas that maybe don't have the power infrastructure to support it, and can't get the power infrastructure to support it, we're just crossing a line of, no matter what the cost is, you're going to do this improvement. And I don't think we're there yet. I don't think that was the intent of the legislation. And I think that's why it was very specific to new construction. So for that reason, for there being no other exemptions for, exceeding 50% of the value or anything else, I think sometimes we mischaracterize a level 3 tenant improvement as this massive remodel when all it means is your work area exceeds 50% of the area of the building, and that doesn't always translate to a massive, very expensive remodel. So I'm still not in favor of this, and for those reasons, I don't think I'd be willing to move this forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Micah?
I'll parrot a couple of things Tim said, but at the same time, this would apply to level 3 alterations. As Tim mentioned, that's 50% work area. You could have that without ever touching any electrical at all or electrical infrastructure. So that has some concerns. Kathleen mentioned about, substantial alterations. We don't exempt the energy code. That's correct. We don't. However, the energy code has lots of options. This wouldn't allow you options. As Tim mentioned, it's just across the board, you're going to do it no matter the cost, which is odd because the existing building code doesn't even do that for accessibility. Under alterations, if your accessibility can't be met, you're going to look at technically infeasible, which is defined in the existing building code. If there was some exception to talk about technically infeasible for this, maybe you'd have a little more traction, but I think just blanket level 3 alterations are going to be required to do this, whether or not they touch electrical or electrical infrastructure, or even if it's technically infeasible based on the definition. I think that just goes along almost too far beyond the RCW. As Tim mentioned, the RCW is very specific to new construction. And again, if you're not given breaks for this, where you give breaks for other things, even if you don't give breaks for the energy code, there are some breaks for existing buildings in the energy code, even if you have to meet it. And there are lots of options. The existing building code gives some breaks for structural under level 3 alteration. So again, hey, you got to meet it all the way, no issues, no questions, no options. I think that's just a step way on too far. Even if you do get it in the existing building code, I think there's got to be some options or some breaks along the way. Thanks.
Okay, Mike.
I agree with Tim and Micah, and so I won't repeat what they said. Some of that is what I was going to say, essentially based on the power infrastructure just not being there. With a level 3 alteration, there's a broad range of different projects that can be included in that, and most of them, I would say, are not changing their civil design outside. And it's the civil design with new construction that you're able to enable the EV ready or EV capable. But to take an existing building undergoing level 3 alteration, I think it would, I can't support this if there was not an exception for when the project does not include redoing parking lots or exterior or any of the civil work. If all of that renovation is limited to inside the building, I think it's unfair then to make that a trigger for exterior work that would not otherwise be occurring. Again, I think the market would drive that. If they feel there's a need, then they would include that if they have the capability in the electrical systems. But without that exception, I don't think I could support this.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Patrick.
Yes, thank you. For the record, this is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington. I think Michael, Micah, and Tim all said a lot of what I wanted to say when it comes to the alteration. I'll mimic ditto those comments as well. I thought that King County might come back with a revision that incorporated some of that feedback from last time, but it looks like they haven't. And I think if you create this requirement and you make it apply to projects and alterations that might not be doing anything with the parking lot or the electrical necessary to this, you're going to be creating such a cost increase for the alteration that you're really just going to discourage people from potentially going that route, which means just letting the building go without that alteration, potentially then getting rid of all of it and doing new construction, which I think defeats the purpose of trying to lower emissions, and then when it comes to the economic analysis, the point of that in the form is to compare the cost requirements of what's being proposed to the current code. And what I've seen King County do is they take what their change does, but then they compare it to some other situation, not necessarily what the code is. The current code doesn't require this. So you're straight up increasing costs. And then they mainly just use the same analysis from the other forms, which compare the new construction to retrofits, which the current code does not require retrofits as of right now. And then when you add in these requirements, you got to keep in mind that you're also increasing, if you're going to factor in emissions, you're increasing emissions. You're causing extra work to be performed, or they might have to tear up the whole most of the parking lot and then redo all of that. There's the extra materials. There's also the extra energy use and emissions that come from the electricity. I think there's already incentives in place, and there's already some market need for this. So if a project is doing this and it makes sense, they're going to do it. But putting in this requirement in the existing building code would be extremely cost prohibitive and negatively impact housing costs across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Roger.
Yeah, if the tag feels like it doesn't, without additional exceptions, they don't think this should move forward, that's fine. I just want to basically disagree a little bit with the assumption that the RCW very clearly only deals with new buildings. New buildings are mentioned in section 2A. However, if you read section 3A, up at the beginning, if you read section 3A, the rules adopted under this section must exceed the minimums. And then it says for all types of residential and commercial buildings. And I believe my interpretation of that is that all types of residential and commercial buildings include existing buildings. So if there are other reasons for us to not move this forward, that's fine. That's the will of the tag. But this idea that the RCW only applies to new buildings, I believe is erroneous.
Thank you, Roger. Steve? Steve, are you there?
Steve, you're still muted if you're talking.
Oh, thanks. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Can kind of concur with Tim's comments on this and Patrick's to some degree as well. I've been involved in building renovations for quite a long period of time, and it can be very expensive, but it's a much better option, I think, in terms of developing reuse and sustainability. An example was the Davenport Hotel in Spokane. I worked on that, and I actually worked closely with the developers, and I began to realize that building renovations need to walk a very fine line, and they have to make people that are doing the renovation have to make keen market assumptions to bring forward successful projects. Anything we do to that degree that makes things more expensive can hinder the development of reuse and renovation. And these projects are often victims of what I would say 1,000 paper cuts. And every time we add another restriction or requirement, we push those projects just a little closer to abandonment. And at one time they were talking about tearing down the Davenport, which would have been a tragedy in my mind. I just feel it's not a good time for this. And also the EV market is rapidly changing. If you just read the headlines, you'll see that every manufacturer is backtracking. And even if you look at I have data here from even the state of California saying they're considering modifying their proposal. And many of the other states that have adopted similar or adopted the ACC2 regulations that the state of California adopted are now backtracking. And one or two of them are now saying they're going to only require 82% EV adoption, not 100%. So the way things are in such flux right now, it's just not a good time to be making, I think, these kind of assumptions that we know what we're doing yet. Let's wait and see how things settle out before we move forward with these proposals. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, if we're ready to entertain a motion.
This is Tim. I'd make a motion to disapprove this amendment or proposal.
Yeah.
Lansdall, second.
Okay, so I heard Tim and Lance on a motion to disapprove or deny. Is there other discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Petition 1, 2, 3. This is revision 2 has been recommended for denial. I'll try a voice vote. All those in favor of the denial signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed to the denial?
Aye.
Okay, so let's move into a roll call then, please.
All right. All right, Joe Mayo.
Aye.
Tim Woodard.
Aye.
Lance Dahl.
Aye.
Hoyt Jeter.
Nay.
Bill Mybush.
Aye.
Josh Mergens.
Aye.
Michael Shaw.
Right behind.
Aye.
Michael Barth.
Aye.
Paul Clark.
Aye.
The motion to deny passes 8-1.
Okay. I guess I should, on those denial votes, ask if anyone wants to change their vote and make sure they understood aye was for denial and nay was against denial. But if hearing none, okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Kathleen, for bringing that forward. Okay, now we're moving into the three.
One proposal.
EV proposals. The first one, do we want to address first probably petition 135, which had the question, the legal question?
Yeah, I think that would be relevant to this one to kind of talk about a little bit first.
Okay. Unless anyone's opposed to jumping out of order like that.
So the question asked was about the exceptions, whether or not striking them and modifying exception 1 and completely striking exception 2 would be contrary to the requirements of RCW 1927.540. In discussion with our legal representation and interpretation of that RCW, the modification as proposed would make us non-compliant with that RCW in that legal opinion. So if we were to move this particular proposal forward for table 429.2, we'd have to remove the modifications as drafted for the exceptions here.
Okay, so just framing all of this, we've talked about this a lot. We have time and we'll make time to continue, discussion and deliberation and questions. We're scheduled to go to 4 today. We can extend that if it's the will of the TAG, but we do need to take action on agenda 12, which is moving the full package. So just kind of framing our time here. With that comment on an exception, there's a couple of different possibilities here. One, that take and deliberate and discuss whether to strike that piece in this proposal, and then discuss how to move each one of the proposals forward or deny, or group them, so forth. So I'll leave it to the TAG to begin this discussion on this one or the other ones, as you will. Do you want to put the other ones up? So just remind everybody the reason why we're grouping these all together is that if it's the will of the TAG to pull that exception out, really we're talking about table changes in all of them.
Yeah, so I don't know what would be the best way to show all of these.
Just maybe start with the number 8, and Kim, go ahead and talk while we're doing this. Some remind everybody 1, 2, 3 first.
Well,
Essentially,
1, 2, 3 was IEBC, was it not?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. 068.
Gotcha. So here's 068. The main change here is to change the number of EV ready parking spaces for all other group occupancies from 25% to 15%. And is that an accurate characterization, Patrick?
Yes, I was just gonna clarify if we're just talking about the exception for that one proposal, if we're talking about all 3 of these at the same time.
I believe now we're talking about all 3 of them. In the exception, if we move all 3 together, that exception needs to be modified so that it's accurate or remains the same as it is currently drafted.
Go ahead, Tim. I think you're right. And then we'll go back to you, Patrick.
So I was thinking we maybe could take action on the first one we were looking at, because I mean the only change besides that is the EV capable parking spaces, which could easily be captured through public comment or what other provision if the other code changes go through. So my anticipation of how we could move forward today would be to deny that first proposal and focus our conversation on these other 2 proposals and how to handle them.
Okay.
So was that just to clarify what you were saying, Tim, you were suggesting we potentially make a motion to deny petition 135, which is this one here. I'll show them side by side with 068, and just the one that's on the right hand side of your screen. You're suggesting the TAG entertain denying that particular one, and then talking about the other 2, which have modifications to the same section?
That's correct.
Gotcha.
And Tim, the alternative would be to amend, right? But either way.
Sure, but you could amend the other one if we wanted to amend to include now 25% there, or that could be
Understood.
captured at the SBCC. It just didn't seem like there's any purpose in continuing on with the second code change or the one on the right-hand side of the screen.
Yeah, understood. Okay, let's hear from more people than Patrick on.
Yes, thank you. There's been a lot of discussion about these proposals so far, so I'll try to keep this brief. I think that the current code already massively exceeds what the RCW is asking for. And based on the feedback that I've heard from folks involved in the construction of these types of buildings, they said the current code is just really excessive. So I tried to look for a way that we could walk that back a little bit, but still meet the goals of providing EV charging parking to meet the needs of the occupants, not just for now, but 50 years from now, while also lowering the construction cost a little bit. And I think that my proposal does that. And I think that's in line with also one of the statutory objectives and purposes of the State Building Code Council, which is to eliminate restrictive, obsolete, conflicting, duplicating, and unnecessary regulations and requirements which could unnecessarily increase construction costs or retard the use of new materials and methods of installation or provide unwarranted preferential treatment to types or classes of materials or products or methods of construction. That's from RCW 1927 020 subsection 4. And so I think with my proposal, we're still exceeding the requirements of the law, and based off that, Excel calculator I showed to you before, this will still be providing an ample amount of EV charging infrastructure parking spaces that will meet the minimum needs of the average occupants of buildings, even when we get to near 100% EV adoption. So I can understand how, there might be some desire to maybe move forward both of the proposals that affect EV ready. But in my mind, really, I think the best thing is to just look at either reducing it or keeping it where it's at, which would be my proposal. Either the council either adopting it or not adopting it, and I think there's plenty of room to reduce that just a little bit, and it's going to lower construction costs a little bit, but still provide a lot of EV charging infrastructure that will meet the needs of the occupants in the building 50 years from now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. When?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm going to preface this by saying, since the fire tag is over with, that I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a citizen and resident of Washington. So speaking from personal experience, I recently bought a brand new condo, new construction. And luckily enough, I was able to get an EV spot, but I was also on the board, and there was a high demand for EV spaces. There was 5 available spots left in the infrastructure, but we had 20 people asking for it. So there is demand for new construction. Also, if you guys follow the subreddit for Washington, there's a lot of folks on there that are constantly complaining about the lack of EVs for their apartments, their condos. So, if this was a negotiation table, I would probably be willing to combine both proposals together, give Patrick the 15%, but also get the 25% of EV capable. Because then that would satisfy folks like in my building, we have those 20 people, but we're short 15 EV capable spots. So, at that point, if they want it, they could pay for it themselves, but at least it's capable of having it. So that's my 2 cents on it as a resident.
Yeah, thank you. Or to Roger.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've just heard 2 different points as to whether we have enough EV chargers, and I also know the proponent on one of the proposals, put together some pretty strong statistics of the number of EV cars that are EV charging requirements are going to be out there in the future. So I go back and I actually kind of disagree with Tim on the first proposal. I would suggest we amend that proposal to get rid of to keep the exceptions up above the table. And I would like to see all three of those proposals brought before the State Building Code Council with three options, two options to change all other group R occupancies under the EV ready parking spaces, and one to change the EV capable. And we have that broader discussion. And I go back to the reason I think that is important is I think that there is a whole lot of interest in this throughout the state. I think that these proposals should go out to public opinion across the state. Everybody can see what is being proposed, and the State Building Code Council can take full public comment from everybody, not just those that are involved in the building code tags, to really make a decision as to whether we deny all three and keep it as it is. Quinn makes a great argument for going to 15 and the EV ready, but increasing the EV capable. Those are both, it's a great comment. I just think that conversation belongs in the full public realm, which would be after CR 102 gets filed, and make a determination after we are able to get input from all of the public.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. Josh. No, Hoyt, I'm sorry.
This is Hoyt Teeter, City Tacoma, principal engineer there. I don't agree with reducing it to 15. The rationale that they're giving is they're talking about, I'm not someone that looks at reducing the code just because a little bit of cost difference. We've already been doing it. 25% seems fine. They're called EV ready. The future is EV. People are building more. There's more out on the road. There's parking places and other things, and new construction should actually incorporate that, keeping that 25% of the total parking space. So I disagree with, I'll vote against this proposal to change it back to 15%. I don't think the argument is good enough, what he put in his reason statements, to reduce it to what the code already has.
Okay, thank you, Hoyt. I think we're on to Josh now.
Okay, I'll make this brief because I'll be the first one to admit that I don't have an immense amount of knowledge in this area of what we're discussing, and that's why I've largely stayed quiet. I want to throw out a couple of thoughts. If this was a perfect world to me where I got to make all the calls, it sounds to me we have good convincing reasons why we expect these, why we would need a significant additional demand, and why our current capacity is already going to be acceptable. Given that we have two projections of totally opposing views, it would seem to make the most sense to me that we do nothing and wait until we have some better data on how this relatively new provision is working. That being said, considering what we're called here to do, not where me or anyone else says, hey, this is what I think makes the most sense, I largely echoing Roger's opinion, if we're the technical advisory group, I don't know that, this is so much more of a policy and economy based decision point that it does seem to make sense that that we could say to the council, we've vetted the technical merits. However, there's arguments for all of these combinations of numbers. Some may be better than others, but it probably would be best left to council and public comment on these numbers, as there is no tangible technical way to accurately predict future demand. And we have, folks citing from a person who's not familiar with this, citing sources that both look very reasonable and make a lot of sense when viewed in their isolation, but are of completely opposite opinion. That tells me our data is most likely insufficient, and it would probably be best to wait. But as a technical advisory group, I think we should be making sure that these are technically accurate, that there's no major code conflicts, and then leaving decisions that are more based on, you know, maybe I'll say will of the people and public policy and already passed legislation. That seems to be more of a council level. So those are just my opinions. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Josh. And Patrick. Patrick, you're mute if you, there you go.
Sorry, one moment. My AirPods died on me. Can you hear me?
Very faintly.
That's why you got to go away from Apple products.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. I was going to ask if I could share my screen again to bring up that calculator. I'm just kind of wondering what ratio that we think is necessary of like how many EV chargers do you have to have the dwelling units in order to meet the needs. King County's proposal, if you have a 1.5 parking ratio, you're getting a close to a 1-to-1 ratio of parking spaces with EV charging capacity to dwelling units. Now, in spots in King County where you've got a lot of EVs, sure, maybe that's something you want to do. But when you're talking about a minimum requirement statewide for what will be a shared resource in a parking lot, it's not a each one dedicated for each dwelling unit. I feel like increasing it is just absolutely unnecessary. And then I think the current code goes a little bit beyond what it needs to, but still reducing it, you still have, almost 0.5. So for every other dwelling unit, you'll have a parking space that is EV charging infrastructure. So I know that King County and folks have talked about, well, we need X number of chargers statewide, but when you look at the needs of the occupants of the building, I don't see justification for raising it to an almost 1-to-1 ratio. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so we have 15 minutes left. Again, let's decide though if we're going to extend and just plan for our actions today. So one thing I'll weigh in on here is again, back to, our RCW we were looking at earlier, the 1927-540, and that's under the building code section. We were looking at that rule 3 where it says, it kind of talked about where the rules under this section must exceed the specific minimum requirements established under subsection 2. But then it goes on to say, to the extent necessary to support the anticipated levels of zero emissions vehicle use. And so it goes in a little more detail, but I just think the council has a tough task of looking at forecasts, and how that's defined can be debated, what data sets we look at and so forth. But to me, I'll state my opinion that it's very clear. It's not looking at current adoption rates, it's looking at anticipated, where we're going. And that's true with a lot of the building code. So I guess my question to the tag here is, can we establish with confidence a number today, or do you feel that should be the council's responsibility and we're looking at the technical merits of this, saying, yeah, this probably needs to be looked at every 3-year cycle, and some action needs to be taken on adjusting those table numbers, or you don't feel that, and you feel they're locked in stone right now and only the legislature should really weigh in on this. So go ahead, Joe.
Just had a comment about what you were just saying, and it is a bit of a chicken and the egg issue. And if there are more EV capable or charging spots, then I think that would actually hasten the adoption of EV cars, because if people perceive that there's a lack of places to charge, then that's going to slow the demand. And so I think our future is electric, and being supportive of that and looking to the future is probably a good policy. But then at the same time, I agree with what Josh was saying, that I don't know that we should be the people that decide what that percentage is, and moving it to the council to make that decision also makes sense to me.
Thank you, Joe. Quinn?
Yeah, so going back, that's the reason why I gave my example of, you know, the available is 5, but yet there's the demand for was 20. You can anticipate, and I think the 21 code did try to anticipate it, but the real world demand is going to be much more. I mean, or less, right? But in this case, in my case, it was a lot more. And so I think Roger had it right that, you know, this should go to public comment. We can only look at the technical side. So, you know, 25 to 15, 10 to 25. I mean, it's all great, but I think from a technical standpoint, it's really hard. You know, again, datas are also can be tailored to, you know, there's biased data out there. So I would just go by what the public wants, and that'll be hard for the tag to try to put a finger on.
Okay, thank you, Quinn. Go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, I agree with what Quinn's stating. I think this goes beyond the technical requirement of the tag to try to come up with what these numbers are. I think we need some public comment on this, and let the public help decide, or let the legislature and the public decide what those numbers are, because I can see both sides of the argument. You come to the east side of the mountains, and I don't think our usage rate is for electric vehicles is as high as the west side, and I'm also not convinced that on my own personal level that EVs are going to be where the state wants them to be in 2030, 2035, 2040. I think there's going to be other technology out here that comes in that does replace a good chunk of our EV wish. So that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Mike?
I was just gonna, with time running short, we've got 3 proposals left here. Proposal 68 essentially is 15%. Proposal 122 is 40%. But if we're gonna focus as a tag on the technical merits, I think we could look at 135 and think that, you know, the removal of the exceptions isn't a number issue. And I think the removal of exceptions probably should not be approved. So it seems like we could, I don't know, in my opinion, 135 should be taken off the table. And then, you know, if anything's going to move forward for a public discussion on number, then 68 and 122 is where to have those discussions. So I would like to see us address 135 and just get that out of the way.
Okay. Seems like a good starting point. If someone wants to make a motion.
I would make a motion to exclude 135 and move the other 2 proposals forward.
Lance. Okay, thank you, Lance.
I'll second that.
That is Hoyt as a second, I believe. Okay, so that's a motion for all 3 proposals then. So that's.
Wait, I thought it was just 135 we're talking about.
Can you clarify, Lance?
No, my motion was to exclude 135 and move the other two forward.
And that also, I thought we were going to. I second that.
So we could even say deny 135 and move the other 2 forward, however you would like to word it.
Okay, we'll take some more comment here, Micah.
Thanks. I honestly was the one that spoke out against 135 just based on the exceptions. However, I think you should still move the percentage modification of that proposal forward for consideration, because it actually modifies the EV capable parking spaces and not the EV ready parking spaces. Again, you've already made your motion in a second. but I would encourage that as a third proposal to move forward because it does modify a different column in the table. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Micah. Mike?
Mike, you're muted.
I think he put his hand down. Go ahead, Mike. Can you hear us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just suggesting that to keep it cleaner, the numbers even of EV capable could be part of the discussion for either 68 or 122. I don't think we need to move 135 forward to keep that discussion on the table.
We
Okay,
could potentially modify the motion to amend 135 to create revision 3 to, just have the modification to the table.
I would take a friendly amendment.
Hoyt, do you agree with that?
Once I get to my unmute, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, Justin, is it easy to quickly
Yeah, I should be able to do that here real quick.
okay, and go ahead, Roger. Well,
Yeah, I was
Justin's
gonna ask for proposal 135 to get sent to the State Building Code Council, because as a council member, I would actually probably, the way I am right now, where I sit right now is I would probably deny the first two, but I might approve this one to increase the number of EV capable and leave the number of EV ready the way it is. So I would really like to see all three of those go through to at least to the council level, and then probably to public comment. And somehow the council probably will need to tie those three together and come up with what we think the proper, given public comment, what we think the proper number should be in that table. So
okay.
I would support doing it, including it the way it's shown right now, all three of them, but only with the number changes in the tables.
Okay, so I'm going to try to state this, and so everyone's on the same page. So it's been moved and seconded that petitions 068 revision 1, 122 revision 2, and 135, we're going to call revision 3 as amended on the screen, have been recommended for approval by the full council. Does everyone understand that the same?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other deliberation on that? Are we ready to vote? Okay, let's try to do a voice vote.
Do the people that made the motion agree with that revision?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Mike. Okay, let's try a voice vote. I think this captures it on the screen. 40 or 15, and then 25 on the capable. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we'll count that unanimous. And with that, then petitions 068, 122, and 135 as amended are recommended. Okay, thank you for that. I think that's a good path. Okay, we have 6 minutes left. Let's try, but hopefully be ready for if we need a 10-minute extension or further if needed. Is everyone okay with that, or do we lose quorum at 5 or 4? Sorry. Try to
Let's see. No, I mean, nobody I think has indicated they need to leave at 4. But I guess we'll ask the question, does anybody have to leave at 4? If not, then we will maintain the quorum.
I am tight, but I can stay a little ways past 4 if we're going to be if I'm needed for quorum.
And
we'll try to keep this concise, but there's a couple just cleanup things we'll try to get through quickly.
And we have
I've got 10 extra minutes and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
We have 2 extra seats on right now, so if we lose 2 people, we'll still be okay with quorum.
I
Okay,
need to
well, let's
leave
try
at
to
4 as well. This is alternate.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Okay, well, let's get started. So we're on to agenda items 12, which is now the whole package. We've gone through all the petitions and made recommendations or denials. I guess we could actually just, do we want to introduce anything, Dustin, first? I know.
Yes.
Okay.
Earlier today, I received a revision for the embodied carbon proposal. And that's number 118. It doesn't change any of the code language. It just updates some of the economic cost stuff. I haven't had a chance to review it, but I let her name is escaping me at the moment. I let them know that we have the revision on hand to show if anybody wants to look at it here today. But I don't think it impacts what we have going for our movement forward. And Patrick, you have your hand up.
Yes, I was gonna bring up this proposal for that very same reason. The problem is though, I don't know if it's necessarily a requirement, but generally we've been trying to have revisions available ahead of time. And this wasn't made available to the public. It's had many opportunities for revision there. So I have issues with that not getting posted on the agenda at least 24 hours in advance.
I will agree with your statement that I didn't get it posted. I did not have it available to post in time. That's why I'm trying to be most clear that I have a revision that was asked to be included with the package to the BFRW. We can bring the revision to the table at that meeting, or we can look at it here a little bit and move forward. But I do sympathize that we have not had a chance for the public to digest this.
Yep. So that can be up to the TAG to move that version or recommend that they bring it to the committee. So thank you, Patrick. Roger?
I am going to suggest that we not reopen it. I mean, if there's not a change to the technical requirements and the only changes to the economic impact, I believe that we've determined that the proposal previously was complete and this TAG approved it. There will be lots of conversation, I'm sure, during the CR 102 when other people will put forth economic data. And I think that if the proponent has additional economic data that they want included in that discussion, that can be part of the public comment.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
And then just to write some other stuff on the package that we have here. So what was posted for the meeting today was the same package that was posted for the meeting that we had last Thursday. I've been working to try to make sure that this spreadsheet is as up to date as possible. So some of the proposals that were discussed at the last Thursday meeting are different than what was posted on here today, but those are just reflective of the decisions made by the TAG at last meeting. There's no new information other than the spreadsheet looks different. Coming here to my first yellow box here for GP 1093. When we discussed it at the October 3rd meeting, there was a direction for staff to revise to make the content of that proposal clear. Showing here just what we have going. It was to change the WAC section to reserved here. And so we went through and just made sure that the content is clear on that one. Looking again at our next one, we had some.
Hey, Dustin, can I interrupt for a second? We're gonna have to make a motion to extend. Should we say 15 minutes?
This is Tim. I'll make a motion to extend for 15 minutes.
This is Tim.
Second.
Who was the second on that?
Lance.
Lance, thank
We'll
you.
go Lance. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and meeting's extended. Okay, go ahead, Justin.
All right. So the second one for GP 132, also we had a unanimous recommendation to adopt as discussed at the meeting. We had some clarifying revisions to make to this just to make sure that we knew what was going on. And we are amending the WAC section 305. And so this has been cleaned up just a little bit to make sure that it's clear what's being done on this proposal. So versus what was shown on screen at the meetings where these last two proposals were discussed, there's just been some clarifying changes. There's no content change there. And those were done. And then rolling through, we have now 5 proposals that are recommended or withdrawn or recommended for denial. They'll be shown in red. So as I get down towards the bottom, I have a modification here. The reason statement's been updated on GP 1004. The single exits proposal is shown in a different color and has no decision by this tag on it because it is slated for the ad hoc tag that will begin work in 2025. This one that's also shown number GP 1038 was approved in case that number 114 wasn't approved. So we could maybe talk about that one a little bit more because we did move 114 forward. And so this one has similar content, but it's I guess the motion made was if 114 didn't move, we wanted this one to be included for the critical component of those. Moving forward through the rest of our stuff, I have the stuff that was on our agenda for today is shown in yellow. And so as this one moves forward to the BFRW committee, these sections will be modified so that decisions made here today will be reflected on this sheet at the bottom. And I want to also point out that over the course of our discussions here, supporting documents were submitted to staff, and we have them all included here in the far right-hand column for people to view what was submitted. We have a bottom section here for the International Existing Building Code, and this 123 is the only one kind of hanging out there that didn't have motion on it before today, so that one will be updated. And that's my high-level intro for our Group 1 package of the building code and existing building code package to the committee.
Okay. Dustin, can I ask a courtesy here to click on the proposal that has my name on it, just so I'm not accused in my position of trying to slide something by. So revision 2 that's posted there. What I wanted to, no, the revision 2.
Oh, sorry, yes.
What I want to point out is part of the action taken was to add the reference in chapter 35. In addition, there was proposed language from 2 trade associations that I have shown here in green, but I would like the tag to just put eyes on it and say agree or don't agree that it is the same language. It's the blue language is what was passed. I'm okay either way, but I wanted to acknowledge that the trade association found something that might be cleaner like this, but I don't have a strong preference either way. If so, there's another, I can introduce this to that committee and then recuse myself, but I wanted to have this recorded. So we don't have to get into here. We can just keep the blue and note this on the record. But the green on the bottom, I guess, is the important part that was requested during the action. And then I sent Dustin a version that has things properly underlined. So
just a quick question. So basically, if I understand, the green is your new stuff that you're going to put in there. Is what we're looking at, right? The changes. And you're crossing out the blue, right?
Yeah, and where this gets confusing, right, Hoyt, is, everything should be underlined. The red is obviously from the standard that we're putting into the code. The blue were the amendments to that standard. And then what was pointed out to me by the trade association was, well, maybe technically it would be cleaner if you wrote it this way, and they gave me some language. I'm not saying they wrote that exact language, but I don't disagree, but I also don't, I want to make sure everyone has eyes on it, so it's not trying to, it is different language. So go ahead, Tim.
I'm familiar with this stuff, and I'm fine with these changes that you have there. I mean,
I was gonna say, in the effort of other things and what I heard brought up before too, of not having 24 hours to digest, obviously we weren't aware of these, so unless we were gonna vet it and take full testimony now, I feel like the best route is what you suggested of bringing this change forward, and I appreciate you sharing it with us so that it doesn't feel like it was purposely left off, but something that can be proposed at the next level.
Okay, appreciate that, Tim. Thank you. Roger, would you?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I agree. I think it makes sense, the language, but I think because it hasn't been posted, we should approve what was forward on what was approved previously.
Okay.
And there is a better way to word it, then we can handle that later.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for entertaining that. I just wanted to clear my name.
So
my role as chair here.
For that, to bring forward what was previously approved, we have the R1 document. I'll have the R2 document in this spreadsheet. And so as far as the note here, viewing the revision 2 at our final meeting, what would the I guess there's supposed to be, or should be, a language crafted in there for how the tag is viewing this one. So we approved R1, and then should I break out R2 off of this spreadsheet and introduce it in a little bit different way?
I was just going to mention this idea that the thing that we asked to be added was that reference to chapter 35, and it was. So I think for that reason, we did re-review it and we're sending it on. But for the changes in the technical language, I feel like that should be proposed at the next level.
Okay. That's clear. Okay, anything else? Okay. And the next step would be a motion to recommend the entire IBC, IEBC package to the BFRW Standing Code Committee.
So moved. This is Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Second.
Second by Hoyt. Any discussion on moving the entire package? Any questions? Okay, let's try a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, the Group 1 IBC IEBC package is recommended to the BFRW Standing Code Committee.
There's a hand up by Roger.
I think he's
I was
celebrating.
going to say, congratulations and what great work we all put in. It's a lot of work we did, and it's great to have it done.
And
Thing I want to say,
I don't know that the council should ever try to do Group 1 and Group 2 IBC in one setting again, but this is quite an accomplishment. So.
and I want to say one more thing. I hope everyone has a real happy holidays and a fantastic new year.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, and in genuine, thank you everyone. This was a very big lift. Thank you to staff, tremendous effort. And if you're curious, it is common that the standing committee or the council would ask the committee to weigh in on amendments and once we go into public rulemaking. So that is the next step if you're not familiar with this process, but functionally we've done the substantial amount of our required work. So, okay, thank you everyone. Is there any other business on the agenda? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
everyone.
Really appreciate everybody's input and putting up with me while we do all this.
Dustin, thanks, Dustin. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.